Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Owensboro Board of Commissioners special called meeting, January the 10th. At this time, I'll ask the City Clerk, Beth Davis, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Pam Smithwright.
Here.
Commissioner Larry Maglinger.
Here.
Mayor Tom Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark Caslen.
Here.
Commissioner Bob Glenn.
Here.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is first reading of ordinance item 3A. Ms. Davis.
Ordinance 3-2023, an ordinance of the City of Owensboro, Kentucky, authorizing the issuance of its City of Owensboro, Kentucky General Obligation Bonds, Series 2023A, in the approximate aggregate principal amount of $35,350,000, which amount may be increased by up to $3,535,000 or decreased by any amount for the purpose of financing the costs of the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of 1, an indoor sports complex, 2, a training center for the Owensboro Fire Department, 3, fire station repairs and improvements for the Owensboro Fire Department, and 4, various other community development projects, approving the forms of the bonds, authorizing designated officers to execute and deliver the bonds, authorizing and directing the filing of a notice or notices with the state local debt officer, providing for the payment and security of the bonds, establishing a bond payment fund for the bonds, affirming the existing sinking fund, authorizing the acceptance of the bid of the purchaser for the bonds, and repealing inconsistent ordinances introduced and publicly read on first reading this 10th day of January 2023.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? City Manager?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. These are not new items, but as many times over the last year or so, we've discussed the various projects that have been under consideration. We've also discussed on multiple occasions how to pay for those projects. Those discussions have included the amount or cost for each project, as well as how we would service or pay the debt over a 20-year term of the bonds for the projects. On your screens, you see a summary showing the projects which have the majority support of the Board of Commissioners and the cost for each of these projects. As a result, this is first reading of a bond ordinance to provide funding for the projects that have consensus to proceed and as depicted on the slide in front of you. The only change from what was considered at the December meetings is the removal of the transient dock, as that project does not have consensus among the board to move forward. This bond ordinance, along with the accompanying budget amendment, represents the final approval for these projects. City's financial advisor, Stan Kramer, is here. Stan described the process, or the bond process, at a meeting in December, and between Stan and staff, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Kramer? I guess not.
Drove all of this.
Got off easy.
Should ask me something.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Well, good.
I will say that the market has kind of gone your way a little bit here, so if we can hold the markets together, interest rates are down a little bit from what they have been. And we're attempting to get into the market before the Fed meets again.
Good deal.
Yeah, and Mayor, that's part of the reason why we had a special called meeting today, and then second reading on the 17th is to allow the bonds to be sold before the end of January. I think Stan expects an interest rate increase in early February.
Can you describe these various projects? Is that just some slush money in there just in case something comes up?
I mean, potentially it could serve as a contingency if needed. It's primarily intended to help us with the next phase of fire projects, as we've talked about. This includes Station 3 and the training center. We plan to do Station 1 and I believe Station 4 in the next 2 to 3 years. And so we anticipate having costs for those for architects, engineers. We've already bought one adjoining property owner out, and we may buy another property or two to expand our footprint. So mostly related to costs for future projects.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion from the dais? Okay, thank you. Item 3B, please.
Ordinance 4-2023, an ordinance amending the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30, 2023, and amending Ordinance 8-2022 to provide for bond issuance and related projects, updated infrastructure and servers for the 911 telephone system, various other items needed by the police department provided for by the state and federal drug funds, corrections to CDBG and home funds, additional funding and appropriations in transit, and to provide for commission-approved incentives. Introduced and publicly read on first reading this 10th day of January 2023.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just a quick question, if I may. The language, and maybe I'm misreading this, but it says additional funding and appropriations in transit. Are we talking about in transit of funding or in the transit department?
Well, both. Transit Department got some additional grant funds that are being appropriated.
Okay. We have any chance to get another electric bus? I know that was a Fed money.
It was. It's not that amount of funding, though. It was quite expensive. I do have a brief summary, Mayor, if you'd like me to
Sure.
cover those items. Sure.
That's fine. Thank you.
First reading of a budget amendment ordinance. The amendment accounts for the receipt and expenditure from the proceeds from the bond ordinance that was just read, so it appropriates funds as we just saw. Projects are budgeted at the amount shown during the last item and as previously presented. In addition to the project, the amendment includes a server replacement for central dispatch, which is funded by surplus dispatch funds, so no new revenue is needed. For the police department, software and various canine-related expenses are being paid from restricted drug funds. And then finally, the amendment incorporates an accidental omission from a previous carryover budget amendment and then appropriates various transit grant proceeds, and it also accounts for and includes funding for the Big Rivers incentive that the board approved on December 20th.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, good deal. Next item is item 4, popular annual financial report. Angela Waniger, the Director of Finance and Support Services, please.
Yes, I'm happy to present the popular annual financial report. This is our 5th one, and I am going to take advantage of the extra time that we have here today and speak to it in a little more in depth than what we have in the past. So this is the popular annual financial report. We call it the PAFR. What is the PAFR? I call it the PAFR like the Cliff Notes version of the city's annual audit. By example, our PAFR is only 12 pages long, and the city's annual comprehensive annual audit is 168 pages long. The PAFR is designed to be readily accessible and easily understandable by the general public. This report actually serves 2 purposes. One, it's to fulfill the OBKY recommendation for making summarized and easy to understand annual reports regarding the financial status of the city and making that available to the community. By fulfilling this reporting, and the second reason, by fulfilling this reporting recommendation in the form of a PAFR, the city participates in the awards program established by the Government Finance Officers Association, or the GFOA. This is allowing us to receive national accolades. It also allows us to garner input and advice from the GFOA reviewers and staff on how to provide the best document possible. Speaking of national accolades, the city has thus far received an award for every one of the 4 PAFRs submitted to the GFOA. So with that, let's look at examples of information you might find in the PAFR. And you all will have a copy of the PAFR there in front of you to follow along with, and we'll also have it on our website. So things that you will find in the PAFR. I wanted to make mention that the PAFR is an annual report. It follows information from the audit, and this particular one is for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. So first off, what you'll find in our PAFR is a message from our city manager to the residents of our city. There's also elected officials and administrative staff names reflected for anyone wanting or needing to contact them. There's also financial information. The city has 27 funds reporting financial activity. The PAFR focuses on the financial activity of the general fund, as this is the city's general operating fund. All revenues not allocated by law, ordinance, or contractual agreements to another fund, one of the 26, they're accounted for in the general fund. An example, if you will, of revenues not reflected in the general fund would be a portion of the insurance premium license fee dedicated by ordinance to pay for the downtown revitalization bond debt service. You will find this revenue in the downtown revitalization fund. We got city demographics reflected in our PAFR. You'll find information such as median income for the city, cultural amenities, the number of city parks, fire stations, public schools, etc. I thought it was interesting to find in the PAFR, we have 25 city parks and 4 pickleball courts. Another interesting factoid reflected is the city's top 10 employers and the number of employees employed by each of those employers. We also have city signature projects. There is a page in the PAFR dedicated to key projects that the city is working on, and we'll discuss this in more detail on a later slide. Other city highlights. The PAFR has many interesting facts to read up on. One can find how much the city funds agencies grouped by the arts, social services, and government services, as well as how much the general fund transfers to other funds. The city partners with other agencies on operations such as dispatch and GIS. The transfer information reflects the city's contribution. More detail on the transfer information may be found in the city's audit. You may also find information in the budget. One will also find the city's current tax rates on page 6 in the PAFR. On our next slide, we like to recognize the elected officials in office for the respective year of the PAFR. We feel it's important to recognize and give credit to our elected officials who work hard to provide direction for the city and its future. There's also a list of the administrative staff who assist in these decisions and carry out the desires of the commission. In the back of the PAFR report, there's also contact information for city departments and other agencies, such as the airport, hospital, and OMU. On page 3 of the PAFR, you will find information on how and when the city was named. Good historical information. Where the city is located geographically, and the businesses owned by the city, being OMU and the Riverport Authority. One will also read that the city is under a city manager form of government and how that process works. Not all cities in Kentucky are under the city manager form of government. Some are under the mayoral form of government. Our next slide is the general fund statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in the fund balance. I apologize for the very small print of this slide. It's meant to be demonstrative of what is in the PAFR. While this report is called the Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance, it might be better known or referred to as the income statement along with equity balance. The GFOA requires 3 years of activity, which is helpful in seeing trending activity. Along with that, items of material variance are noted. So if someone wanted a true summary of the general fund's activity at a glance, this is it. Again, more detail can be found in the city's annual comprehensive report on the city's website. Excuse me. And our next slide, again, is the general fund. And this is just a snapshot, if you will, a pie chart, helpful to see by percent where the money is spent. As you can see, the bulk of the expenditures is salaries and benefits, depicted in the blue on the right-hand side. This is due to the fact that the city is a service-oriented entity, so naturally a larger percent is dedicated to the workforce. You can also see over on the smaller pie graph on the right-hand side, the blue is for public safety, and you can see that that is the larger portion of the salaries and benefits. And this is primarily due to the fact that these services are provided 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our next slide is our accolades and awards. We have 2 pages dedicated to the many accolades and awards in our PAFR. Owensboro has had its share of notoriety, so we brag that up in our PAFR. This is not only good for our residents to know, but it's also important for those who are looking to potentially bring their business and or family to our city. A couple of awards I want to mention includes Site Selection. This is an international publication. They ranked Owensboro metropolitan area the third best for economic development. Also, our Lazy Days Playground was named #1 in the world by Landscape Architects Network. Granted, that was a 2015 award, but I still like to hang on to that. I think it's pretty interesting that it's #1 in the world. And our next page is our GFOA awards, and you'll see the different types of reports that we submit to the GFOA for award consideration. The first one, and this is just copies of the front cover of the most recent award or reports that we've done. The first one is the annual budget for 22-23. The middle one is our annual comprehensive financial report, and what that is our audit along with other schedules and information, and that's for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. And the last picture there is our popular annual financial report from last year, 2021. So our PAFR includes information on all of the reports that the city has been nationally recognized for with the awards received by the GFOA. This is important for more than one reason. Rating agencies such as Moody's look for this as a measure of the city's financial position as well as other features the city has to offer. Businesses and investors also look for these documents and related awards for information on a good potential place to be. We have received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award 23 times, the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which is the audit, 41 times, the PAFR 4 times. And we hope to receive an award for the PAFR I am now reporting on. And like I said, there's more information on these reports and the awards in the PAFR on page 9. So we come to the last slide, and we call this our items of interest. This page in the PAFR showcases some of the city's significant projects, such as enhancement of our firefighter infrastructure, we refer to as Operation Firehouse. We are replacing Fire Station number 3, and we're providing for a new training center. We are also looking to construct an 88,000 square foot indoor sports complex. Other projects include the Jack C. Fisher batting cages, the Ben Halls Golf Course irrigation, and the York Ditch Stormwater Drainage Project. You may find more information on these projects in the PAFR. I'd like to note that the city has several projects ongoing at any given time. You may refer to the city's annual budget for more information on other projects and initiatives. With that, that's all that I have. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, Ms. Waniger, I think I can speak for all of us. We, as elected officials, we don't have a whole lot to do with this. This is staff-driven, and I want to thank the city manager and yourself and all the department heads for the tremendous job they do to keep our community relevant in these tough times. And you can pat each other on the back if you want to. I can't reach you all, but it's really important that we recognize what kind of staff we have, and we do have an excellent staff. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. I would be remiss, if I may, I'd like to thank Whitney McFarland for her artistic and technical capabilities, as she is the one that put this together and she designed it. And special thanks to Nate Pagan, Leland Hancock, and Beth Davis, who were integral in helping put this together.
Okie dokie. Any other comments? All right. It's always nice to have a good report from the finance person, isn't it?
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 4B. Kevin Cullen, City Engineer. Please take the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Kevin Cullen, City Engineer. 6849 McPherson Road, Philpott. Here today to give you a brief presentation on construction inspection. In the engineering department, we have 2 construction inspectors. Some of their job duties include investigation of concerns reported by the public, inspection of asphalt resurfacing, capital projects, permits, private development, and assistance to other departments. Concerns reported by the public, those are typically called into city action, or they can be reported through Accela, which runs the Public Stuff app. The inspector is the eyes in the field, boots on the ground, so they're typically the first person to investigate that concern if it goes through the engineering department. Some of the common concerns, complaints are sinkholes, pavement issues, and drainage issues. The inspector is tasked with gathering enough detailed information to report back to the office personnel, whether that might be assistant city engineer, so that they can determine the proper course of action, if any. And from that point, the assistant city engineer, typically that's the person who would get these after the inspector. They will send a work order if needed through the street department or a contractor. Milling and paving operations. Typically, this is 2 different contractors. So there's a milling contractor. They have the machine, the milling machine we call it. They grind down that top surface course, usually an inch to inch and a half thickness. And then following that, usually days or weeks later, the paving contractor will resurface that, replace that top surface course. The inspector will determine the exact limits in the field of the milling and paving. They will also check depth, check tonnage throughout the day to make sure quantities aren't overrunning. Something else they might check would be the temperature of the asphalt, rolling pattern of the machines, joint placement, and traffic control. Capital projects. Some of the past capital projects include the Locust Street Parking Garage, Ben Hall's Maintenance Building, and Jack C. Fisher Park improvements. The inspector will inspect to make sure that those projects are being constructed in accordance with the plans and specifications for that project. They might also measure quantities, review payment applications, and document the daily activity. Permits. The engineering technicians will issue permits for work within the right-of-way. The inspector will review that work to make sure it's constructed in accordance with our public improvement specifications or the specifics of the permit. Private development. This usually pertains to like a new subdivision. Developer they will submit a subdivision plan through our office and also planning, and there will be certain improvements that identified on those plans that will become public upon completion. And so the developer will post a surety for any improvements that are not completed, and the inspector will inspect those as they're being developed. Those might be streets, storm sewers, sidewalks. And upon completion, the developer will submit a surety release request. Following any corrective action, surety gets released and those improvements become city-owned, city-maintained. Assistance to other departments. What you see all there on the left, those are concrete cylinders. Those are for testing concrete. Typically we do that for street slabs. So inspector, they might do those in accordance with the street department, and they might also help with construction staking and sidewalk ramp construction, curb elevations, things of that nature. One of the most important jobs of the construction inspector is record keeping. They keep a daily log to document weather, personnel, equipment, work hours, the work performed, and they will also take pictures. Proper documentation is our best defense against any litigation or future claims. That's it in a nutshell. Like I say, we've got 2 inspectors. Generally, our inspections are limited to work that's within the right-of-way. We don't do inspections on homes, things of that nature. That goes through planning and zoning. But be happy to try and answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions, please? Mr. Glenn?
I've got two quick ones. So a lot of our roads are state roads, and so for the benefit of the public, if something, we have potholes and things on Frederica or work that needs to be done on Frederica, and the city did something about that, we'd be in violation with the state, right? We're not allowed to touch the state roads, Parish, Frederica, et cetera, right?
Yes, we like for them.
I hear that a lot.
We like for them to fix their own streets. Of course, if it's something emergency nature, we might take action. Or if it's infrastructure that's below that surface that's causing it, we might assist, in determining the cause of that. So yeah, we don't just turn our shoulder to it, but we do try to let them maintain their stuff. We maintain ours,
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing I hear people go, why don't you fix Frederica? And I go, it's a state road, we
Right.
all say that. So, the other quick question I have is sidewalks. Is there any position in which a developer could build a housing subdivision and not put sidewalks in? I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to hear you officially say it.
So sometimes there is delay in some sidewalk completion. That could be if that lot hasn't developed. Typically, a developer won't put in sidewalk until the lot is developed. Otherwise, the sidewalk gets broken and things like that. With our latest policy, this will be applied to new developments. There is a 5-year clause on sidewalk construction, but it also tied the sidewalk to the certificate of occupancy and no longer requires them to post surety. So that new policy has helped speed that up in cases, I believe.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Item 5, city project list, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Projects list has been in your packet. It provides an update on 15 projects or ongoing initiatives for your updated status report. Nothing in particular this month I want to draw your attention to or emphasize. So if you have any questions, we're happy to entertain those.
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Commissioner Maglayer?
On the northwest area, has that Main Street design been started yet?
First Street?
Yeah.
First Street, yeah, Abby, if you would.
Abby Shelton, Community Development Director. Yes, it is in progress, and we should have it in the next couple months.
Thank you.
The design you're talking about?
The design, yes.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
If the public wants to come and get a copy of this, will it be available downstairs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I always get a couple of requests for this, so glad to know that.
And there's an interactive version online as well, I believe, and we'll probably put that out on social media or link to that as well.
Right.
Yeah. For us old people, we like a little piece of paper in front of us instead of that digital stuff anyway, so I just was curious. Okay. Any more business to come before this group?
I got a question.
Commissioner Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. As far as the Ben Hall's golf course irrigation, I know it's being bidded out. Is there any kind of projected finish date that the city has requested on that, or?
Yeah, Amanda's on her way. I know we've been very intentional about trying to schedule at an off-peak time. So realistically, it's probably a next fall to winter initiative in order to minimize the impact on golfers.
Yeah, initially, we had planned to do it this previous fall, Commissioner Castlin. But based upon the contractors that bid the project and how few bids we received, we realized that to be as cost efficient as we could for the city, we needed to extend that deadline. So we negotiated some additional material costs down to decrease that initial bid cost to the city. So it will be worked on next fall, and it'll be done a hole at a time. So we will have closures on the golf course, but it'll be a hole at a time, so we won't have to close the entire course.
You have a temporary green out in front or something, or will you close the whole hole?
We'll have to close the whole hole.
Okay.
A hole at a time, yes, sir.
Is that it?
Yes.
Since she's up there, may I ask one more question? On Craven's Pool, so you're meeting with the designer. I thought we had it, that's why I'm asking. I thought we had a design. I remember seeing a beautiful design for it. So is this where we're at, or are we waiting to bid the project out?
Previously, we had put out some staff-initiated drawings for things that could conceptually occur. And then we did not get any takers on designing and building that when we put it out last time. So recently, we did put out a bid for a design consulting firm, and we have secured that firm. We've had an initial telephone call with them, and we are meeting with them on property this week to work on finalized designs that we will then bid out for construction.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited about the project, but I thought we had seen a design, so I'll look in there. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor.
The problem with getting people to bid, really, for a lot of these projects, the bond, the grant we got to fix the road out there by the Riverport, when we sent that out for bid, we got no takers. So it's pretty difficult right now with the people. I think we have 57% workforce participation in Kentucky right now, so it's pretty difficult. So if you can get this thing done starting next fall, that's pretty cool.
You've hit the nail on the head, because when we spoke with pool contractors, when we didn't get a bid last time, that's exactly what they told us, is their schedule was pretty far out, because a lot of these contractors don't have the labor force that they had before. Their numbers are decreased, so they can't move as much, move as quickly, or do as many projects.
There's about 200,000 jobs open in Kentucky right now for the trades. That's how many openings there are. Okay, anybody else? Anybody from the public would like to speak on any item that wasn't on tonight's agenda, please make their way to the podium and state their name and address for the record. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned.